Looking for an explosion of pattern for your next project? Let's pair up some stamps and stencils for a unique look. Every technique video is narrated live while I'm doing the technique, so you're getting a real-time view of how the whole process works. Pull out the supplies I'm using and create right along with me, pausing as you need. Before we get started, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to my channel. I appreciate it. Stamps and stencils are a staple in our craft stash, but have you ever tried combining them together? In this video, we're going to do just that, and you're going to create some really unique looks with that effect. So I'm going to start off with a background stamp, and I decide on which background stamp and which stencil I'm going to pair with it by actually combining them before I ink them up. So I have a few stencils here to choose from, and the first thing I'm going to do is actually put the stencil over the stamp so that I can get an idea of what that stamp will look like when it comes through the stencil. This is a really good way to figure out how your pairings are going to work and what level of craziness you're willing to endure for just the perfect look. So the thing about combining stamps and stencils in this way is that it really takes a lot of muscle, especially when you're using the MISTI to do this. So I decided against this particular stencil because the lines on here will have a really hard time going from edge to edge. So that's something you need to keep in consideration. Sometimes doing a solid image or really tiny repeating images like little Swiss dots or something like that is a really easy way to go when you're doing a project like this. So I thought I would go with this one because there's these really big open spaces, and when I stamp over it, I will be more likely to get all of those lines in place the way that I'm looking to have it look. So another thing that's really a good idea is to cut your paper larger than what you're going to need, and hopefully your stencil extends beyond your background stamp, so that way you can use your magnet to keep everything in place here. So I'm just going to go ahead and ink up my stamp here with my inks, and I'm using a dye ink, so I want to make sure that this is not going to bead up while I'm inking this whole thing, because it's a pretty big space. I'm going to use my stamp conditioner here, the erasers, just to give this a nice matte finish. That way the ink is going to stick to it and it's not going to bead up as much. The good thing is I do have everything secured over here on my MISTI, so if I do need to restamp, I can do that. So I'm going to go ahead and just do kind of an ombre effect with these three colors. And we're going to go ahead and stamp it and see how it looks. If I need to restamp, of course I can do that. Or I can go with just whatever it is that I have as a result the first time and decide that that's good enough if I'm looking for more of a distressed look, maybe something that isn't completely filled in. All right, so I've got that all inked up, and let's go ahead and stamp this. Now I am going to have to stand up and really press because stencils have thickness to them. So you need to really make sure you're getting into all of those spaces. If you have a brayer or some other tool that will allow you to press down onto your MISTI, that is definitely helpful to get into all those little spaces. All right, so let's see what we've got. Pretty good results so far. You can see I missed in a few places, so we'll go ahead and re-ink the whole thing. And we'll take a second pass at this to see if we can fill in some of those spaces. All right, so just take note of a few of those spaces that need to be filled in, and I'm going to target those and see if I can get those filled in a little bit better. All right. There, looks like we've got a pretty good fill. Yeah, that looks pretty good. So now I've got really great coverage here. Let's go ahead and take this off and see what we've got. That is a pretty neat pattern. So you can see the angles and the lines through here, and that looks pretty cool all on its own. So now if I want to define these spaces a little bit better, I can replace my stencil right over the top. And there we go. As you can see, it did not come right up to the edges, right? So there is a little bit of wiggle room if you don't get your stencil right back over the top. And I'll go ahead and tape this down. And I'll do a little bit of light ink blending to get all of those nooks and crannies and a little bit more definition behind the stencil itself. I really don't want this to be dark. Since I've got that white underneath, it's going to show up very, very quickly. I don't need to go through a lot of effort. I want to keep that ombre effect of the lines. I just want to give this a little bit of blue background definition to finish it up. So something as simple as that will give me even more definition and a very, very cool effect. For a second example, I'm going to use just a regular stamp set. And as you can see, this one has these cool little bundles. They look a little bit like baby's breath. They're just going to look like little squiggles coming through the stencil. So for this one, I am going to use this mosaic stencil just to show you that it can be done. It just may not look as you expect it to, depending on what it is you're trying to stamp through it. So like I said, the lines would have been very difficult because there are lots of little different edges here. But because I have this stamp on a stamp block, I can really push into it and get the results that I'm looking for. So again, I'm going to use the same grouping of colors. And I'm only going to stamp up the little baby's breath buds on the top. I don't really need to stamp the rest of this. And I'm just going to go ahead and firmly press and stamp all into the stencil. I know I don't normally do this, but I am going to speed this up because it's pretty self-explanatory. All right, now that I have it mostly covered, I think this is a really good time to stop and see what we have going on. So I am just going to lift up one side. I do have my piece underneath secured down, so it's not going to move either. But there is our result, and that looks pretty good. You can see a little bit of the definition around the sides, but not completely. And of course, there are some spots that are missing. So if this is the look that you're going for, that is awesome. If not, go ahead and clean off your stencil. Only because we don't want to get any of this dark color contamination onto our project. And then I'm going to go ahead and line it back up. Again, it's almost just an approximation because you don't have super hard and fast lines at this point. So there we go, that's pretty good. And again, I'm going to go in with my ink blending tool and hit this with a light shade of a coordinating color just to give it a little bit of definition around those lines. And as you can see, that did not look like a whole lot, but as soon as I pull up my stencil here, you're going to see just the faintest hint of those medallions, and it results in a beautiful, beautiful look. So there you go, 2 ways to use stencils paired with your stamps. I hope you enjoyed this technique and you add it into your toolbox sometime soon. When you give it a try, share it out on Instagram and tag me at NicoleWattCreates. I always love to see what your creative mind is thinking. Thank you so much for spending a little time with me today, and until next time, happy crafting.